This is EDUP, Accelerated Excellence.
Leaders, entrepreneurs, and change agents looking for the opportunity to network and exchange ideas with other trailblazers and to further your brand. The 2.0 conference is for you. Experts from the fields of education, health, internet, marketing, and CXO are welcome to take part in the 2025 conference in Las Vegas, Nevada, March 4th through 6. Reserve your space today and receive a 10% discount courtesy of EDUP Xcelerated Excellence with the code EDUP10OFF. That's EDUP10 off. Learn more and register online at www.the2conf.com. That's the2conf.com with the code EDUP10OFF.
Welcome to EDUP Accelerated Excellence, a podcast for the advancement of educational effectiveness and equity across both traditional and non-traditional learning experiences and contexts. In this season 2, we continue to bring forth and ask big and bold questions that highlight the varied perspectives on educational quality and effectiveness. For example, have you ever wondered about the quality of educator preparation in the United States? Well, look no further. In this 2-part mini-series, we sit down with the leaders of both national accrediting organizations for teacher and educator preparation for a fair and balanced conversation, beginning with the oldest, the Council for the Accreditation of Educator Preparation, CAPE, to the newest, the Association for Advancing Quality in Educator Preparation, AAQEP. I'm your host, Jacob Easley II, PhD, PMP. Let's get into it. Welcome back to EDUP Accelerated Excellence, a podcast for the advancement of educational effectiveness and equity, focusing on both traditional and non-traditional learning experiences and contexts. Today's guest is really, I would say this person, from my perspective, doesn't need a big introduction because he is a giant in the profession of education, particularly around high quality educator preparation, and he is Dr. Mark LaCelle-Peterson is the founding president of the Association for Advancing Quality in Educator Preparation, or AAQEP, an accreditation agency founded in 2017 to strengthen P-12 education through excellent, innovative preparation of educators. AAQEP was recognized by the Council of Higher Education Accreditation in May of 2021. Mark has worked in accreditation and educator preparation for more than 3 decades, serving as a faculty and leadership roles at several educator preparation programs in the state of New York. He has also served as the president of the Teacher Education Accreditation Council, or TEAC, and I'm sure we're going to have him talk a bit about that role. He enjoys teaching assessment literacy, historical, social, and cultural foundation courses in education, research methods, and wait for this one, Anglo-Saxon and Old Norse literature in translation, among other topics. A native of Minnesota, he holds degrees from the University of Minnesota and Harvard University's Graduate School of Education. So Mark, you have been on one of the EdUp podcasts before. That was EdUp Accreditation Insights. So welcome back to the EdUp family here with Accelerated Excellence.
Thank you so much, Jacob. It's so good to be here with you and good to be back on EdUp.
Well, we're going to edit up. Thank you so much.
All right.
So let's just jump right into it. So how have your professional perspectives on accreditation and quality assurance changed since the founding of AAQEP back in 2017?
Well, I'm glad you asked that question. And I've been thinking about that very set of issues recently in the context of this. We're working on a volume right now on the changing landscape of educator preparation and locating quality within it, which I'm starting to think of as sort of AAQEP's report back to the field on what we've been up to in our first 7 years of operation. That book is going to include 6 or 7 chapters focused on particular aspects of some of our particular members' work, but we've also been thinking about just what's the big picture that we've been thinking about. So here's what I'd say. Back when we founded AAQEP, a group of us, I was incredibly optimistic about educator preparation and very optimistic as well about the possibility of structured review processes that are peer review based in helping us all to do better. And of course, I felt that way because of the experience I'd had in TEAC and in designing some other organizations within the accreditation space. And I just have to say, looking back, I am more optimistic than ever. So I would say my views, they haven't changed in direction, they've only changed in intensity because of the excellent work that we've seen done by our members and documented through a system that lets people document their performance in relation to common shared standards, but also to document their individual qualities and excellencies in the ways that they serve their own communities. So I'm pretty optimistic all around.
So I like this optimism, and I'm excited about the book. So full disclosure, before we get too deep into this conversation, I, Jacob Easy II, am a board member of AAQEP, and also host of this podcast. But I have no influence over Mark's responses today. So we are having a candid professional conversation. So optimism, I think that's very important, particularly given the current context and some of the tensions that many individuals are facing, and also institutions of higher education, when we're seeing for the first time, particularly in my career, increase in the number of programs that are closing, large in part to economic constraints. So, but can you provide a context for the founding of AAQEP? So what solution or solutions was the organization seeking to provide to the profession, and what contextual matters you thought needed to be addressed?
Well, the story of AAQEP's founding is a truly happy one to me. So there was a demand. There was a demand for an accreditation agency that addressed some of the issues that were challenges facing accreditation. Maybe I'll just mention one of them. One of the challenges that every accreditation agency faces is how do you ensure that holding people to yesterday's good answers don't prevent them from finding better answers today or tomorrow.
Mm-hmm.
So how can you set up standards that have the flexibility that are both true to what we know is the best thing to do today, but that also leaves the door open, in fact, encourages and finds room to move. So there was a sense that that needed to be there. In fact, the whole federal conversation about accreditation at that time, and it continues today, was to say, accreditation can be a ceiling on process.
Mm-hmm.
You can't move the car forward by keeping your foot on the brake all the time, and that's how accreditation was seen, right? So let's stay here with what we know. Let's not move ahead to what we can get to. So innovation was on the table in terms of the federal conversation about accreditation. We said, okay, let's see if we can develop something that is going to be open to innovation while still accomplishing quality assurance. The second thing was there was an increasing realization that quality needed to be looked at in context. In fact, one of the things I like to say is quality and excellence are divergent concepts. They're not convergent concepts. That if you think of the 5 best teachers you ever had, if you think of the 5 best experiences you ever had, you'd find that they're more like themselves than they are like each other. And so we wanted to honor that impulse as well, to say, if you're doing, just to take some New York examples, if you're doing educator preparation in Queens or the Bronx, you've got issues that are the same as other places in New York. But if you're in Buffalo, things are going to look a little different. And then we have lots of rural areas as well. And that's just one state. You take that across the country as well. We're working with schools in California, we're working with schools in Missouri, we're working with schools in 37 states now, educator preparation programs, I should say, in 37 states now. And so could we design a system, right? The problem to which it was a solution, can we have high standards? Can we have platinum level standards for performance and yet have the flexibility to understand that that wonderful performance in the context of the particular community so that we can ensure that all of our students are being served, that all of our communities are being served and being served well, and be able to document that, both because documenting it provides quality assurance, but it also gives you the leverage to say, all right, that's how we're doing today. How can we do better tomorrow?
Right. So that makes sense. Uh, knowing a bit about sort of the evolution, particularly in education, you were the president of TEAC at one point, and so there was a call to reduce the number of educator preparation programs from TEAC and NCAPE, um, resulting in CAPE, and then following the, I guess, the origins of CAPE. What I'm hearing, there was also then a call to move back
Mm-hmm.
to the idea of having options.
Yeah, so if you want me to, I can address that. I
Yes, sure.
think in an even-handed way, because I was, as president of TEAC, I was of course part of the group that created CAPE, and I think we did a nice job in developing a framework for that organization. Um, and I won't go into any details because that's still an organization that exists and is doing its own good work. But over time, that original plan and design with the flexibility in it didn't seem to be coming true. And so very quickly, a large number of institutions and a large number of states started to say, well, come to think of it, maybe we were better served by having some options, by having some choices. And they expressed that. And, so we responded to the call, a group of us, and we've now been growing nicely. I'm not sure if I mentioned, we're up over 200 institutions now in our 7 years. So we've had a good growth trajectory, and still a lot of enthusiasm around this work of quality assurance in a collaborative ethos, again, with top level standards, platinum level standards that we continue to work with and to refine.
Right. So would you say that flexibility in this case, and you talked about um, quality and context, but quality and excellence being sort of divergent, but flexibility sort of standing out as one of the key attributes that distinguishes AQUEP.
I think that's fair. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So how have diversity, equity, and inclusion debates affected AQUEP? Because we know that these conversations, such as censorship and other topics, are prevalent in the contemporary discourse around education quality and education in general.
Mm-hmm. I'm gonna go into that, telling a little bit of a story about the early days, which would be 7 years ago right now,
And
summer
we
of 2017.
and we love stories
Yeah.
here.
All right. Well, we had a working group together to create our standards, and I would say we were Zooming before it was cool. I'm not even sure it's cool anymore because some people are tired of it. But anyway, we used video conference platforms to put together all the work that we did early on, and so we were meeting with folks on the standards development group, the working group that developed the expectations framework. Folks from Hawaii to Manhattan and from the Upper Peninsula of Michigan down to the tip of Texas, in this group. And saying, what are the standards for our field, right? We had state ed people, we had ed prep faculty, we had K-12 practitioners, P-12 practitioners. It was a diverse group of people. And one of the members, and now I want to say another little framing thing. We wanted our standards to do two things. One, to address the expectations we have to have today, but also to have a set of standards that have growth potential. And so we have two standards that we call the foundational expectations. Now we have two standards that we say are the contextual challenges or the aspirational level of the standards, right? So ones where there's more flexibility in how you enact it. We were talking about that level. And one of the members of the group said, I have a question. I said, I've been thinking about our work. I have a question. What's the biggest challenge and shortcoming of our education system today?
Mm-hmm.
And that made everybody go quiet for a little while. We were all thinking. And one of the members of the group finally said, I think the biggest challenge that our system faces and the shortcoming it exhibits, it does not educate all equally.
Mm-hmm.
It does not provide an equal education for all. We have disparate outcomes that are just not acceptable. And the person who brought this up, who happened to be a faculty member in the City University of New York system, said, I think that's right. He said, and if we don't have something at our standards that calls us to address that, we might as well pack up and go home because we're not going to do any good. And that was a profound moment for us. And that's the origin of aspect 4A in our system. Accreditation loves letters and numbers and all that. It's aspect 4A that says all providers, all programs that are going to get accredited have to show that they're working with their partners to address the needs of high need schools in their vicinity. Now, notice what kind of standard that is. We can't go in and say, well, okay, let's show us all the high need schools in your area, and then we'll tell you which ones you ought to be, or all of them. We said, no, this is so important that we all have to be able to address it and to move forward on it and to work on it. And if it weren't such a big problem, we'd already know the solution and we'd already be doing it, right? So this is the perfect example of one of those wicked problems that you can't just say, well, just do A, B, and C, and it's all going to be dusted up, all going to be fixed. No, this is a big problem that you have to look at in your context, because we all have the schools around us that have great needs. We all
Right.
have the schools around us that aren't succeeding equally for all learners, not because anybody's trying not to, because that's the problem we have as a system. So we said, let's say that's part of what we all work on together. That's going to look different, very different. It's going to look very different in different places. And we want people trying a lot of different strategies. So how have we addressed diversity, equity, inclusion? I would say we started with that central problem and said, and we know we're not going to fix it ourselves, and we know we're not going to be like the old national education goals that said in 10 years all these goals will be met, or like No Child Left Behind that says in 15 years everybody's going to be at a right. We know it's not like that, but if we don't work on it, we're never going to make progress. And if we can free ourselves to use our creativity, then we can work on it. So now I'll back up. I'll back up to our mission. Our mission says that our goal is to provide equitable service to all learners equally. So we have it in our mission, service to all learners. We have it in our standards. Our standards for candidate outcomes says they've got to know culturally responsive practice. They have to know how to work with English language learners. They have to be able to engage positively with families and communities and caregivers. They have to work to meet the needs of all students with identified needs, right? So that's all about serving all learners, and all means all for us, right? When we say all, we mean all. And then in the expectations for the programs, we talk about working with partners to address unequal outcomes. And I think signature important for an accrediting body, we say you have to look at fairness and equity in all of your assessments, because we know that assessment is a primary lever of inequality in some cases. Again, not because anybody set out to say, oh, gee, let's make an exam that's not fair. But you got to look at them. You got to look at every assessment you use and say, have we done everything we can to make sure that we've got a fair assessment, an equitable assessment? Because our mantra on that is, if it's not fair, it's not accurate. If it's not accurate, it's not fair. And you can't do anything if your data is not accurate and not fair. So I would say it's pretty thoroughly woven through our system, both at the level of what we say needs to be there for candidate outcomes for folks who are becoming teachers, or who are becoming licensed as principals, or becoming, gaining whatever credential they're getting, but also for program practices themselves, to be paying attention, to be looking at things, to be working towards equity. And I'm going to go on this for just one more second. My stories are too long, I know. We had the wonderful privilege at one of our annual symposia. We have an annual quality assurance symposium, which is a great conference. I hope everybody looks it up and wants to come to it. We had to go virtual like everybody else during the pandemic. So we had just a marvelous quality assurance symposium where Marilyn Cochran-Smith came and addressed us at the beginning. And she challenged us with a set of 4 category of questions about what equity would look like in evaluation. And so we're still chewing on those questions. We're still, as a staff, and when we come together in other contexts, we're still working on those questions. How do we make sure that we are acting in a way that's equitable? That very same conference, the closing presentation was by some deans from the Education Deans for Justice and Equity, another wonderful group that has a fantastic framework for evaluating one's own program along the lines of equity and social justice concerns. So absolutely marvelous. So I would say we're looking at those issues from the start, thoroughly through and through. Now, you did ask another element to the question, so you mind if I keep going on that? What we're doing?
We were really asking about the debates, but
Yeah.
as you have answered, I have a few follow-up questions.
Okay, and then let's come to the debate, because I got more on the debate. We'll get there.
So and you're really talking about Marilyn Cochran-Smith's book on reclaiming accountability. Was that the time
That was
that book was published?
It was a couple years after that book was published, and we've embraced her intelligent professional responsibility framework
Okay.
which says, how we work together to support each other as we improve.
Experts from the fields of education, health, internet, marketing, and CXO are welcome to take part in the 2025 2.0 conference in Las Vegas, Nevada, March 4th through 6. Reserve your space today and receive a 10% discount courtesy of EDUP Accelerated Excellence with the code EDUP10OFF. That's EDUP10OFF. Learn more and register online at www.the2conf.com. That's the2conf.com with the code EDUP10OFF.
Are you an educational leader or organization seeking innovation, or just a new perspective? Then look no further. Xcelerated Excellence Consulting is dedicated to offering support to educational leaders and their organizations to meet their full potential for excellence. Services include strategic planning and problem solving, continuous improvement expertise in areas such as assessment and accreditation, and professional development, empowering leaders, individuals, and groups for personal growth for organizational excellence. To learn more, find us online at xeconsulting.org. That's xeconsulting.org. So I want to drill down on equity a bit. So how does AAQEP define equity in the field of education accreditation and quality assurance? And what practices have been instituted to ensure equity for educator preparation programs or EPPs across the country? And we're talking about those that fall under the auspices of AAQEP.
Yeah, the starting point and the foundation for everything is our students and families and communities being well served by education. And then you back up from that and say, well, how are we preparing? And so, within our standards framework, we know that culture responsive practice is part of that. We know that good assessment to be able to do differentiated instruction to support learners is part of that. We know that language is a factor in education, so understanding the impact of language acquisition. And these are all things, by the way, that have been known and recognized for a long time. So they're right up there in our foundational expectations category of our framework. So that's part of it. Then we know that there are some things that are more contextual and a little bit harder, and that's where we've got the expectation of outreach with families or connection with families and caregivers and communities. So the approach we take is to say, and these are the standards that the field has agreed to in creating them, right? Is to say, where's the evidence that there's success in this, and how can you gather that data in such a way that helps you to engage even more and further? So there's equity in terms of everything that we know, that we can know now needs to be there to support equal outcomes and thriving for young people, for learners, and for communities. And then in the program practices themselves, we really focus on doing the introspection to say, are you serving all your candidates well? Are there candidates that are disadvantaged by your admissions criteria? Are there candidates that are having trouble making it through the pipeline? What are you doing proactively to identify needs? And so we've got a little subroutine that says, hey, do this little self-study on yourself to look at your recruitment, admission, monitoring support processes. How are you supporting everybody? How are you pulling people in? How are you supporting them through to the end of the pipeline? And in doing that, we have a separate aspect that says, well, how are you identifying workforce needs and working to address them with a more diverse educator population? So we're, basically our standards ask providers to, to take a look at the needs, to take a look at the opportunities from a number of perspectives, both the individual service to the candidates, but also their larger institutional efforts.
So yeah, that's important. That we just sat down with Tyrone Howard, the immediate past president of AERA, and addressing one of the topics in his book around equity now. We were talking about the importance of including caregivers and parents in the educational process. So I really appreciate this focus on serving communities and helping future educators to develop the skills to be able to do so. I'm wondering, when you use this phrase, service to all learners, as part of the DEI or equity framework for AAQEP, what are you finding, if at all, institutions, how they're handling outcomes when they see that their future educators are producing better results for some communities and not others.
You put your finger on one of the big challenges we actually have there. It's very hard to get that data about the outcomes down the road. And this, by the way, was one of the, I'll circle back to the question about what problems was AAQEP trying to solve when we were founded. We care a lot about that. And if you go back to the NCLB and Race to the Top era, there was a lot of energy put into developing longitudinal data systems that would help states track that data and help that data be fed back. Now,
Right.
that was fraught with problems. There were problems about the measurement. There were problems from the statistical aspect. There were problems from the political aspect because we got a lot of states that said, where parents said, we don't want that data sent back to anybody else, so lock it down, don't send it. So the money ran out for the development of systems. People got their backs up about sharing the data, and the measurement stuff wasn't that hot. What could be better? So what we've said is, let's focus on that by taking the data where you can get it. We have some states, and not to look away from the fact that some states have wonderful data systems
Right.
to feed that back. We've tried to say, well, what are other ways that we can look at reaching out and getting that? And so a lot of our programs really focus on connecting with employers of their graduates. And so it's a little bit less the way the question was framed. We can see where their systems, because really it comes down to the school systems, right? Where those systems are serving well and where they're not. We sort of bundle it into we'll find out where the needs are, the one I talked about before, and see
Right.
how you can engage and do it. So sort of making it a program responsibility, but then also at the same time, really pushing people to interact with their graduates and their employers when they're out in the field to say, how did we do preparing you? But also to always ask the question, what more can we do? So it's building on whatever partnerships we can get, our members rather can get, locally to help provide that input and to strengthen things.
So having grown up professionally in the educator preparation field, I am a firm believer that we cannot prepare future educators well in the absence of collaboration with districts and communities.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that this is a smart direction to nudge and to encourage EPPs to work with their district partners or school partners, and particularly in cases where there may be limited structured organized data sets at the state level or even at the district level.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's important.
Yeah, if you're actually talking with the folks who are in the building and working with the kids and see how your graduates are doing and think about what they need, you can make a lot of progress. You do want all the other data, you want every perspective you can get, but it's the partnership that matters so much. And we go this step further as well in our work with our members, talking about data quality, right? Ensuring the quality of the evidence that they are gathering and using, because you might not have those outside systems, but everybody's building their inside system. We say, people get tired of our saying it when they go through our workshops. It's like, how are you going to bring your partners in to help with this? How are you going to bring your partners? Because here's what I think we're after in our partners. We want to develop effective educators, and that means our quality assurance processes absolutely depend on our developing shared expectations and shared professional judgment about the performance of beginning teachers, or about the beginning of performance of educators who are beginning a new role as well, right? Someone going into a building leadership, district
Right.
leadership role, taking on a specialist role. We need to have that shared professional judgment, and that means we're talking about, well, what counts as the evidence? And if you think about where the conversation about data quality has been, the focus is on consequential validity. In other words, can you infer that the outcome you want is actually happening? And I say, look, if we do that in conversation with the folks hiring our graduates, and we both look at, let's say, a TPA, if you have any listeners in New York, you'll know that all across New York, all programs had to develop their own new teacher performance assessments as a program completion requirement. We said, look, when you're developing those, do it together with your school partners, with your closest partners, because what you want is the results of that assessment to actually forecast that people are going to be able to do what they want to do, right? You want the employer to agree, yeah, that's good evidence that this is going to be somebody I want to hire. This is good evidence that I'm going to, right, as the candidate, I just put together good evidence that shows I'm going to be successful. So we're kind of mixing the categories up, but I think in a good way.
Well, I mean, that ask is really a design approach, and
Hmm.
being able to begin with the end in mind.
Yep.
So
Hmm.
it's sort of evoking back to the words of Stephen Covey. But
Yeah.
so you work with your employers. So what are the needs? What are the traits what are the needs of the district? But what are the traits that define a proficient or high quality or effective beginning teacher or beginning administrator?
Yeah.
And
And then just to give a shout out to a couple of members, I'm thinking of one, Plymouth State University in New Hampshire and Northwest Missouri State in Missouri. In both cases, you had cases where once you've started to develop those kind of relationships, then when you've got a candidate in a classroom who says, gee, I need to know how to do more about this in literacy instruction with some elementary kids. The examples were kind of the same in both places. They'll come back to this is even before the student teaching, come back to the methods and structure, and the instructor will say, well, let me go out and talk to that person because I already know them. Let's figure out something we could, right? Let's build solutions in the moment to help improve the practice in the school. So we just see such beautiful work coming together out of those partnerships as they're developed, and really getting everybody on the same page and working towards those end goals.
so speaking of partnerships, given that AAQEP engages with state departments of education for agreements or contracts or agreements, and those are to shape the accreditation for the EPPs or educator preparation programs within the state, what role, if any, has the association played in shaping state policy?
That's a great question, and one of our founding principles was that we wanted to work in partnership and collaboration with states and providers in the states in order to reduce duplication and in order to increase efficiency and also to improve performance. So, as you and as your listeners will know, states vary quite a bit in how they approach. The regulation or the guidance for educator preparation and what they require in terms of quality assurance. So that's a place where AAQEP's flexibility really pays big dividends for us. So we've partnered, we have formal partnerships with 20 states right now, and we've got informal partnerships, relationships. Some states say, hey, we're glad you're working here, but we don't make partnerships. Massachusetts even wrote in their rules that we don't make partnerships anymore with accrediting agencies. We say, well, that's fine. We'll still work together with you. And we do. In terms of changing policy, we've had one state that we've worked with for a long time recently revised its standards for programs. And funny thing, those standards pretty much mirror ours. And so we're starting to have that kind of influence. We've also seen states sort of take a page out of our book about the way that they interact with programs, like setting up more regular meetings with people for conversations. By the way, we actually have a monthly meeting with state education officials that it's open to everybody from every state that works with educator preparation and licensure. We've had about 35 states come from time to time. So we're trying to model a lot of behaviors that we do see some states adopting, but I think it's slow, but I think we're going to see more and more movement in that direction, right? Working with our standards framework.
Well, this is interesting because you talked about flexibility at the top of the show. And we know that education is a reserve right of the state. So you can conceivably have 50 different type of educational systems.
Mm-hmm.
And then you have one set of, well, I'm just thinking about AAQEP. So there's one set of AAQEP standards.
Mm-hmm.
So you have a single set of standards across 50 different states that may have 50 different variations of what their standards might be. So I can imagine that sometimes that could be a little hairy.
I think we benefited a lot from having state education department officials as part of the working groups that actually put the organization together. It was mostly ed prep folks and P12 folks, but there were some state ed folks there as well, and it was very helpful because they reminded us of where things, where there'd be potential problems that we could avoid. One aspect of our standards says every provider needs to meet the obligations and mandates of the state in which they operate.
Right.
It helps us a lot with the states to be able to point to that and say, look, we're not trying to push anything other than what you're doing. We're working with providers that are meeting your framework, and our framework enhances what they're doing. So we've developed some creative ways, I think, of partnering with states so that they can engage with our review process and make sure that their needs are met, but in a way that doesn't require undue duplication. And then there's some other states that say, no, we have our system, and so everybody's going to go through that, and then you can work with AAQEP or another creditor if you want. And so we have members in those situations as well. But we found ways, and just generally good partnership all across the country with our state colleagues.
Are you an educational leader or organization seeking innovation, or just a new perspective? Then look no further. Xcelerated Excellence Consulting is dedicated to offering support to educational leaders and their organizations to meet their full potential for excellence. Services include strategic planning and problem solving, continuous improvement expertise in areas such as assessment and accreditation, and professional development, empowering leaders, individuals, and groups for personal growth for organizational excellence. To learn more, find us online at xeconsulting.org. That's xeconsulting.org. So, 7 years, AAQEP has been operable or in operation. Mm-hmm. In what ways has the association advanced the overall quality of educator preparation, or perhaps research, because you mentioned this book regarding teacher effectiveness? So what has been the footprint of in terms of an outcome that you can point to around quality?
You know, I would say the footprint is just starting to form. One of the principles we were founded on was that we wanted to see sharing of information and see the research that's done in accreditation become more generally available. Mm-hmm. The history has been that accreditation has been a very siloed effort where you do a self-study, you learn a lot for yourself, you bring 5 new best friends to campus as the review team, and then you spread the knowledge of your program a little bit, but it pretty much ends there. We said, you know what, we learned so much in accreditation. How do we spread that? So we're seeing more sharing of good practices through peer-reviewed sessions at our Quality Assurance Symposium. The volume I'm working on is actually the second book in our series on program evaluation and educator preparation. We had another volume out that looked at use of data to make improvements. So people are learning from each other. We're engaging. I like to say we're enlarging the circle of learning. Mm-hmm. So bringing people together. Now, it's a little bit hard to be able to step back and get any kind of an objective, broad-based view about how things are changing. But I do know that's one thing I know. People are sharing information more, learning from each other more, collaborating more to solve problems. And they come back and say, this helped us make things a lot better. We're so glad we did that. We're so glad we learned from each other. I also know, a second thing I know, is that our standards framework seems to be working in doing both things that we wanted it to do, which is, one, make sure that providers are meeting the fundamental expectations that we all know from the research and educator preparation as a mature field, but that they're also using their quality assurance processes to explore new innovations and deeper connections with their school partners. In some cases they had those deep connections already, right? I always say we don't cause good things to happen, but we provide a good framework that encourages good things to happen and lets you document them so that you and your partners can be more assured of them. So I'd say those are the two things. One, the greater spread of information and getting folks in the habit of a widespread culture of sharing around improvement, and then also that work individually and locally.
We're talking about sharing of information and data. EPPs, particularly those in New York, I hear folks talk a lot about how much they appreciate cohort meetings. Can you talk a bit about those in the vein of information sharing?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and this goes all the way back, and all of the ideas that became AAQEP, came from the field and from our members in the field. And one of the challenges folks had was it's hard to get communication sometimes, and you feel like you're working in isolation. So we set up the cohorts to do two things. One, so folks weren't working in isolation, they could collaborate with each other, and each cohort has a full-time AAQEP staff member. So our members can be assured that they've got a full-time staff member that they can talk to every month, and they can talk to them offline as well. But you can always be in communication, with the full-time staff of the agency. I think that's been really valuable. But you're right. What we hear more about is how much people value the chance to come together. So the cohorts are small groups. We'll say maybe 10 to 12, usually in a cohort that meets once a month at a set time. And it's purely voluntary. We usually have, any given month, anywhere from 60 to 70% of our members participating. By the way, one thing we wondered was, after you're accredited, are you still going to come back and do that? The answer is yes. There's not much difference between the participation rate between folks who are already accredited and who are continuing to work on the quality assurance process after accreditation. And building on good ideas from some of our members, our colleague Christine Dawson in New York at Siena College, and our colleague Joe Lubig at Northern Michigan, University of Michigan, they said, well, what if we set up a little bit different structure? So we have our basic cohort model, and we also have one where folks say, well, I really want to work together. I want to find 3 partners, 4 partners to work together with more closely. So we have a little small group cohort model that starts out with a big group in a Zoom room together, and then goes out into breakout rooms where people are committed to using a protocol that says every month, one or the other of the members is going to bring either a table of data to analyze, bring an instrument they're trying to refine, bring a program practice that they're trying to solve. So these are actually small professional learning communities, you could almost say, that have committed to work together over the year. And again, it's not everybody has to do it, but we want to make that opportunity available. And we've seen just some wonderful collaboration, information sharing, joint problem solving, all kinds of good stuff come out of those.
So, I mean, you're talking about the evolution of these cohort models. I remember working at an EPP, and when these were first introduced, there was a lot of excitement. But once folks entered the room, there was very limited sharing, or sort of topical or surface level sharing. I think folks were reticent, thinking, and this is in the state of New York, reticent to share what some might call trade secrets. But I do believe over time that that sense of resistance, not necessarily resistance, because folks showed up, but concern about sharing freely to peers, has evolved and changed.
I think it really has. Yeah, I think it has. And I think it was both not only trade secrets, but also not wanting to acknowledge that you had a problem you were trying to solve,
Right.
especially in front of your accreditor, right? So there might be a little reluctance to say, we're not really sure that the student teaching rating form we're using is getting used consistently at all. You might not want to say that if you felt like there was going to be a gotcha moment involved, right? So it took a little time, but I think the ethos we've evolved is to say, look, we assume every good quality program is trying to get better and improve on what it's doing. So let's all just get going on improvement, right? Let's all talk about the ways that we're aiming to enhance things or make things better, or talk about possibilities. So there was more, I think reticence was the right word that you used. There was reticence in the beginning. I think now that's pretty much in the rear view mirror. Although every time someone new, a new institution comes on, they kind of have to get their footing. But what I love seeing is a culture developing across the organization of strong collaboration and trust in each other.
Yeah, and I think one of the shifts was to organize the cohorts around those who are in the very beginning of the accreditation process with AAQEP, and those who are already established, perhaps who've already completed a self-study report, or have already completed a site visit.
And we have all those options, but we also we ask people every year, what kind of cohort do you want to be in? Do you want one that's more at the same stage, or do you just want one that's more mixed? And we have people who prefer both. So yeah, so we've given people more options, and every time you give people more options and more choice, they're happy with the choice they made usually. The other thing is, if people want to switch, they can switch.
Switch cohort model.
Yep.
Yes.
Switch to a different one.
So, Mark, thank you so much for this time that we've had to talk about the ongoing quality and inspirational work that is occurring at AAQEP. But what can the EDUP Accelerated Excellence community look for from AAQEP in the future, and how might community members engage with AAQEP or sponsored activities?
Thank you for that question. We welcome engagement in a lot of ways. First of all, if someone doesn't know much about AAQEP, I'd say go to AAQEP.org, AAQEP.org, and look around, take a look at what's there. We have a number of webinars that we offer that are free of charge and available to everyone. We have some annual events that are intended to be in the service of folks who are interested in quality assurance. In fact, I'll say we are an accrediting agency, but we are a membership organization. And of our 3 founding purposes, one of them is to become the professional home for folks who are working in quality assurance and assessment and accreditation in educator preparation, regardless of whether your institution happens to be involved in AAQEP or not. So we really invite engagement and involvement. If you said, well, gee, I would love to be a reviewer, go on our website and there's a place to fill out the application to be a reviewer. Lots of resources that you can take a look at. We have wonderful events that people could attend. And of course, we're always interested in having institutions join in our community of collaboration and quality assurance and ongoing improvement and innovation. So it's easy to find my email address in the materials associated with the podcast, or to contact us from the website. So would love to have a conversation with anyone that's wondering, gee, would my institution benefit from participating in this quality assurance community?
So Mark, you mentioned something, you mentioned that you are sort of institutional member association primarily, but individuals are able to engage with AAQEP. Would an individual whose institution may not be affiliated with AAQEP have to subscribe as a member, pay for a membership, or how does that work?
Yeah, we have a lot of material resources that's just freely available for people, whether you're a member or not. We do have an individual membership option as well, so you can be sure that you're getting all of our materials and get member discounts on any of our events or other services that we do. So we'd love to welcome people as individual members, and every person who's associated with an institution that is a member gets all the member resources and member discounts and such like.
Okay, that's wonderful. So Mark, I want to thank you for this time and the opportunity to learn from and with you, and on behalf of the EDUP Accelerated Excellence community, I'm going to wish you the best in the future of AAQEP.
Thank you so much, Jacob, and it's been an honor to be here, and wish you and EDUP Accelerated Excellence community the best as well.
We receive it. Thank you.
Thank you for engaging with the EDUP Accelerated Excellence community. You can find this episode and others on Spotify, iHeartRadio, and Apple Music. And if you like this episode, please don't forget to follow us and share within your network.